I guess everybody can see my presentation. First of all, thanks for the introduction and thanks for the invitation. And today I would like to introduce my new concept in medicine and the so-called permissible medicine or halallopathy. In this context, I would like really to tell you how one could improve prevention and achieve more effective treatments. Today, I would like also to focus more how to fight influenza and coronavirus in particular. First, of course, I would like to discuss why we need a new orientation in medicine and what are the motivation to design a new concept in medicine. Well, there are 2 points: drug discovery and complete recovery. I was involved in drug discovery in more than 25 years and trying to design a drug for malaria, viruses, and for cancer. And what is always amazing me whenever we try to design a drug, and if this drug is approved, goes to the market, if you look at the therapeutic value of this drug compared to the existing drug, the therapeutic value is very limited. So much effort, so much time, and the outcome is very, very low. Besides that, if you are engaged in a drug discovery for viruses, it is very challenging because a virus has the tendency to resist the drug, and this is due to the mutation which is always developed by the virus, which makes it so difficult to target the virus selectively. And if you are involved in drug discovery for cancer, your dream is always to design a drug which could offer a complete recovery for patients, but unfortunately, the concept of complete recovery does not exist in the cancer therapy. What is the only possible outcome is complete remission. So it's obvious when we work as a scientist, we realize that there is a sort of a wall, and this wall is really very solid, which is very difficult to penetrate. And most of the scientists, particularly whom they work at university, they're basically more enjoyed in making more publications, high impact factors. This is all the focus, so basically how to get promotions, how to have a nice story and travel the world and just talk about their own science. But indeed, breaking this wall, although many would see this wall, but it is very difficult to penetrate because many would believe that we need really a miracle to break this wall. And sometimes this is true because when people whom they achieve complete recovery in cancer, they call it miraculous recovery. And miracle is something which is irreproducible. So this is something which is very challenging for scientists to find a solution for such existing problem. And for me, when I was students, I was taught that when, for example, we have a virus infection, when virus attack our body, we have 2 options. So either the virus will kill us or we have to kill the virus. And when we kill the virus, it means our immune system is playing a main role in this process. And of course, the immune system is very complex, but usually the defense mechanism starts by first phase, which is usually non-selective, and then followed by more specific approach where the antibodies will be designed and developed in the body. Information is stored in memory cells, and then in case the virus attacks us once again, then we know how to handle the situation. Now the question is, what happens or what is the response of the immune system with regard to cancer? Now, many would think, yeah, cancer probably it is a disease which required many years to develop. That's why it's not easy to be detected by the immune system. Well, in reality, of course, we have to differentiate between a virus and cancer. Virus is a foreign pathogen. It's a foreign particles. When it enters our body, it has its own specific glycoprotein, which can be easily detected by white blood cells. But the cancer cell is very similar to our body normal cells, so it makes the differentiation very difficult. But then cancer is usually more prone to people whom they are very old. So is it because our immune system is really weak, or is it because cancer really needs so many years to develop? So obviously, if it is related to the weakness of our immune system, this means that when we were young, we had a strong immune system, probably we had cancer, and we never felt it because immune system succeeded to defeat it and repair it and get back to normal. And this is interesting because it means that our immune system is really playing a very important role in handling the disease. And for me, it was interesting to know exactly what is the key elements which is really playing in the immune response in our immune system, particularly when we get old and our immune system start getting weak, how one could really reactivate it to stand for the new situation. And for this reason, I have developed a new concept, which I called it permissible medicine or halallopathy. And it is, we would like to activate the will to cure. And the idea is how to create the favorable circumstances, which makes what is impossible or which makes complete recovery is really possible. And hopefully this new favorable circumstances will make the miraculous recovery reproducible if we create the most favorable situation or environment for the healing process. Now, to go too deep, it is very important to search for those key elements. And for me, I tried to look at the human body from different perspectives, and I selected what I call it the most important two biological process in our body, namely the anabolic process and the catabolic process. And I look at them not from cells, tissues point of view, but from molecular perspective, being as a chemist. So, and I try to understand how those basically process are influenced by what we eat, what we drink, what we see, and what we think. And in the meanwhile, is it possible? What are the key factors which are playing in these two processes? And is it possible to have a sort of tuning for these two types of processes in our body? Now, if we think of a catabolic process, now how it goes usually, if we have a large molecule, which I call it macromolecules, could be proteins, DNA, or something else. And usually when it goes through a catabolic process, it is broken down into many small molecules. Now, this process is spontaneous. What does it mean? It means that we don't need energy for this process to take place. Now, the question is, what is the motivation for the catabolic process to be spontaneous? Now, if you think, if we start, let's say, for macromolecules like a protein, which has a self, which is good or well self-assembled, highly organized, highly functional, and rich in information. And then when it goes through the catabolic process, it generates basically the building blocks of the nucleic acid of proteins, which is the amino acids. And now those small molecules compared to the protein, usually they have less information, less functionals, and also the organization is lost. Now, if you think of organization, indeed, this means that entropy is playing a main role in driving this process to be spontaneous. Now, let's think of the opposite reaction, which is the anabolic process. The anabolic process, it is a process where many small molecules, whom they have less potential, less information, and less function, they are gathered together to generate a highly functional large molecule. Now, this process is not spontaneous. It required energy, and without this energy, anabolic system will not work. And this is what I call it, the potential energy. And for me, the conclusion is really the potential energy is playing an essential role, particularly in the anabolic process. And if energy is available, anabolic process is always active. Now, when we are child, in general, anabolic process is more dominant. That's why we don't need to create the potential. It is already there. Now, when we start getting old, catabolic process is dominant, then we start losing potential when we are getting old. And this is a challenge, how to maintain or enrich the potential, particularly when we pass certain age. And this is of course the challenging situation. Now, let's just give you some more information about the concepts of potential energy and entropy. So entropy is a form of course, potential energy, and potential energy in general, one could just define it as, this is the situation where, let's say, particles or molecules are moving in a highly ordered mood. So this means that the connections between, let's say, brain and the concepts and behavior is highly enriched. It means that the cause-effect information is really maximized, and this is also, it tried to create a sort of compatible system if the potential is always active. And this is the healthy situation, because if there is a compatible system, it is built, it means the flow of information and commands from the brain to the rest of the body is really flowing, functional, and it will always lead to a productive and effective response. Now, in case of entropy, so in general, when potential energy is dispersed, it changes its form and it goes to entropy. Entropy is bad. Why? Because first, the molecules and the particles are not anymore really moving in a highly organized way. Usually it is a highly disordered waves. And then they start work in a non-focused, non-coordinated action. And let's say the information, the cause-effect information start reducing. The connections between, let's say, concept behavior is reduced, and this will disrupt, and then incompatible system will be developed, and incompatible system will really disrupt the flow of information and commands from the brain to the rest of our body. And this is bad, because this will create a collusion between molecules, and these collusions between molecules and random response will generate heat, and heat is bad because it will start weakening the strong bond, and it will break the weak bond. So let's take an example of protein. Protein, when it is in its native form, it is well assembled, it is highly organized, it has high potential, high functional, rich in information. And when it is exposed to heat, so what happens, it starts denatured, and then the weak bonds, particularly the intramolecular forces, will start getting weak, and then we start getting more rotations, more freedoms, and we build more entropy and lose function and information. And unfortunately, if this protein in the body is denatured, usually it has two options. Either it go to the catabolic process, and then it will be broken down again into the basic unit, or it will resist catabolic process, and then it will accumulate in our body, and this is the time where we start looking old. Now, a human by default is a collection of feeling and sensation, and our brain is highly influenced with the surrounding. So brain is stimulated based on the information we receive from the surrounding. And this information could be supportive, could be distractive. And now if we, this information in our brain is processed in the form of neurons transmitters, and those neurons transmitters could be excitatory or inhibitory. Now, based on the nature of, let's say, information we receive based on the neurons transmitters, which is generated by the brain, our immune system, based on my conclusion, it could exist in 3 different moods. What I call it, the fight mood, the fright mood, and the flight mood. Now, what is the difference between those three moods? Now, the best and the most healthy mood is what is called the fighting mood. Now, if our immune system is in the fighting mood, it means if we have potential energy to handle any error and repair it correctly if it happens in our body. Now, I call this mood as the comfort or the high tranquility mood, because this is the mood where we have less stress, less distractive information, and it is always enriched by the supporting information. And this is the mood where we can resist fear and grief, basically. And now, no one can stay forever in such situation. We are always exposed to certain pressure and stress in life. And it depends if this pressure is or stress is for a short or for a while. It is for a short time, it's fine. But if it is for a long time, then this is a problem. Now, if let's say we have a prolonged excitation, then we start getting extra energy, which start going beyond the threshold of potential energy. And once it goes beyond the threshold of potential energy, the potential energy start disperse, yes. And this dispersion of energy basically create a disease which is known as anxiety. And at this moment, of course, during this fright mood, what I call it the fright mood, during this mood, so the system is neither focused nor effectively productive. It targets indiscriminately and can really hit foreign pathogens or its own body, thereby creating circumstances for autoimmune disease. Now, in the other case, if our body is just exposed to neurotransmitters, which is mainly inhibitory, and if it is stayed for a long time, it creates a disease which called depression, and then potential energy will be suppressed in this state, and then it will create the flight mood. The flight mood, it is the mood where we really don't have enough energy to handle the situation, and this is the time where our immune system bypassing many defects and mutations, possibly leading to genetic disease. And clearly, flight and fright mood is enhanced by distractive information. Now, the goal of halallopathy is how to enrich potential in our body, particularly when we start getting old. Now, the best option, of course, is we have really to do so many things. First, we have to replace. We have to replace our distracting information with the supporting information, because this is very important. Second, we have to adopt a lifestyle in our life. And the lifestyles, which once we adopt the lifestyles and then gradually start establishing a harmony between our behavior and lifestyle, and this will help us in creating a compatible system. And this is very good. And the third point, which is very important, is we should have a purpose and a goal in life. Now, to achieve all of that, of course, we need the source of potential energy. And according to what is known, that the potential energy, I can classify them into three different sources. One, potential energy, which I call it chemical potential energy. It is stored in chemicals, in bones, in foods. And at this moment, we have to be, it is very important to choose wisely and opt for quality, biodegradability, and compatibility. So here it is very important that what we eat is really compatible to our lifestyle, which we should have developed. And lifestyle is anything which could just solve your own problem in life. Some people, and this, it could be related to people whom they have issue, for example, with glucose, lactose, or gluten. So they could make sure always to have lifestyles like lactose-free, gluten-free, and glucose-free. Other people would like to widen their lifestyle and go to the vegetarian or vegan. Others, they like to derive their lifestyle from their religions, either kosher or halal. So the second source of potential energy, which I call it elastic potential energy. And usually this is developed by exercise. So if we don't move, we will die very quickly. So movement is essential to our life. It is an indication that we are still alive, and exercise is important, because this is how we can stimulate the growth neurons, and we can activate our growth hormones. And by that, we can also build and repair tissues such as glycogens and muscles throughout the body. Of course, the selection of the exercise is very important, and it has to be correlated with our age. So if you are young, you cannot, if you are old, you cannot use exercises used to do them while you are young, because you don't want to create stress on your body. And for me, the best exercise which match everyone is swimming. And the third source of potential energy, which I call it action potential energy. And this action potential energy is very important because it has a very green aspect. And we start with word. Words has really power. Perceptions are shaped by thought patterns. So a good word with a positive perception, it has a great meaning. It is simply, it is very similar to a tree which has roots and branches and fruits. So it really represents strength and longevity. And the negative perception, it means it is just like a tree without roots, without branches, without fruits. It is just there irritating our lives. So it must be removed. These are the sources of the potential energy which we can utilize to activate our potential to maintain the fighting mood active during the process of our life. This is our goal, is how to maintain the fighting mood active, because this is how we can improve prevention. And if we got sick, it will help us to achieve complete recovery. So if I summarize the concept of halallopathy, life is not easy. It is a struggle. We cannot live without anabolic process. We cannot live without catabolic process. Anabolic process required a lot of push, a lot of energy, and without goals and purpose in life, you will give up so quickly, and you cannot push this rock till you reach the maximum. So obviously, anabolic process will favor people whom they are whom they have a prepared mind with clear goals. Catabolic process will favor people who they are just spontaneous and living without goal. Now, in the end, we have to admit catabolic process will dominate, and gravity will win. So this is how we die. But there is a huge difference between someone who died after leaving a fingerprint than someone who died without being noticed, their existence to be noticed. So that's why it is very important to have a purpose and goal in life to keep on pushing toward the maximum high potential. Now, how to implement those concepts in what we call in fighting viruses like influenza and coronaviruses. And I think we are all educated with coronaviruses. Many people have enough information. Scientists also have a lot of information, but what makes difference with scientists, whenever they have information, they try to process it, and to process it in a way to generate really a solution for such a problem. That's why many pharmaceutical companies succeeded to design a vaccine to protect us from coronavirus. And as we know that vaccine is a prevention tool, but it is not a curing tool. Usually for a curing process, we need antiviral drugs. So far, antiviral drug does not exist for corona. And I think it is very challenging. It's very difficult for a reason I mentioned previously, which is the mutation which is always produced by the virus, which make it so difficult to target it selectively. Of course, we all agree that we should really enrich our immune system. We have to make our immune system always strong, active, with full potential. I have already described the importance of activation of our immune system. We need to maintain the fighting mood active, and if the fighting mood is not active, then we are living in the fright or in the flight mood, which is the window where we start having all types of disease and weakness and getting old very quickly. Now, let's start with the principles which is well known. Those determine toxicity. So it is, when we say something toxic, we cannot say it is toxic without telling how much, what is the dose limit. So now, for example, water, it is not toxic, but if you drink 3 liters of water in half an hour, we will die. So that's why there is always a limit, even the water is the source of life for us. So the same thing when we think of coronavirus. So think of the virus load. Now, probably every one of us could have a virus load which is very low in our body, and that's why we don't show symptoms like even corona symptoms, because and as long as the virus load is very low, then there is no stress in our body, then our immune system is really acting very effectively. Now, first point, let's try to see how the virus behave inside our body. Usually, when the virus load inside our body is increased, we will notice that also the virus load outside is also increased. Now, this movement from inside to outside, from high concentration to low concentration, is a spontaneous movement because it is again driven by entropy. And this process does not require energy, and that's why if somebody is highly sick with corona, he's dangerous or she's dangerous to transmit this disease to the neighboring people. Now, it makes sense, of course, to wear a mask. Why? Because wearing a mask really, it disperses the virus load which is in the front, which is coming out of the patient, and dispersing the virus, it means you increase the entropy of the virus. And if you increase the entropy, you will simultaneously decrease the potential of the virus. So when the virus has less potential, it means it is less aggressive. And the potential is always increased by increasing the concentration of the virus. Now, let's suppose that we have two people, one is highly infected with the virus and the other is just healthy people. As long as we have the right distance, then the virus load outside for both is still not communicating. Now, once we get very close, if you notice that the virus load in the middle is very high, now for the infected person is not a problem, but for the healthy person is a problem, because inside the healthy person, the virus load is very low. And then it is a natural process that the virus to move from the high concentration to the low concentration. And this is the moment where the healthy person starts getting the disease. And once we start getting the disease, what's happened, then the virus will just attack our cells and transfer our cells into factory to produce more of the virus. And then the virus load inside this infected person will slowly, gradually increase. And then it will increase till it reach a certain threshold where it develop a stress. And once stress is developed in our body, potential energy will start dispersing. And then the immune system activity and response start getting weak. So this is where we start developing how they call symptoms. And these symptoms start with mild, and then if we don't take action at this moment, then it goes to the severe symptoms. And then, of course, the immune system has to take care of this process, and usually to fight corona with the help of the immune system, who is under stress. It is a challenge, and that's why it takes so long time and so much pain. Now, my question was, is it possible really to reverse this process? Reversing this process is interesting, because if we could find a way how to reverse this process, then we can control the situation. Now, my idea is obviously, as the more the virus load is developed in our body, so the virus load is increased inside and outside. So when we detect the virus load outside is high, it is an indication that the virus load inside is really high. And my idea is, if we can reduce the virus load outside, does we decrease the virus load inside or not? That was my question. And if you think of if you think of where I am, sorry. Yes, based on a principle which is called in chemistry Le Chatelier principle, and this Le Chatelier principle is well known in chemistry and physics, and it's interesting because even in our body, all these osmosis, pressure, and is working based on these principles. Now, to understand this principle, just let's imagine that we have a beaker which is filled in water, half filled. Now try to understand what's going on in this beaker. So in general, we have a water liquid and we have a water vapor. And when equilibrium is achieved, it means evaporation and condensation of the water molecule is equal. And if you just keep this beaker in this water at room temperature and normal pressure for 1 day or less, it's very rare to lose the water volume to be reduced significantly. Now, if you expose the water vapor to a stress, like a fan, which produce air, and now the water vapor start decreasing, and now we create a stress for the water vapor because it start decreasing, and now the equilibrium is now shifting, because this stress which is developed and the ratio between water liquid and the water vapor has been changed, and it has to come back. It has to regain back the equilibrium. And this is the basic principle of Le Chatelier. And to do that, so the equilibrium will be shift from moving water from the liquid phase to the vapor phase. And it means the evaporation will be faster compared to the condensation. As long as the stress or the fan is there, this will continue. And if you remove the fan after, let's say, half an hour, then the equilibrium will be restored again. And then the evaporation and the condensation will be the same, but the outcome, the water volume has been reduced. Now, how to understand this from corona perspective? Now, if we have a person who is infected with corona, and clearly the high concentration is inside of the virus, the low concentration is outside of the virus is moving from high concentration to low concentration. Our goal is really how to disperse and inactivate the virus load which is in front of the patient. And if this is possible, now once the ratio of the virus outside is dispersed and diluted and inactivate, and the virus is inactivated, then through sneezing and coughing, more of the virus will move from inside to outside. And if we continue, dispersing process is continue, we will reach to a process where most of the virus load inside will go outside, and it will reach the threshold where the stress is removed, and then the immune system will take care of the rest. And now the question is, what sort of reagents here we have to use which could disperse and inactivate the virus simultaneously? Now, in general, people use antiseptics or disinfectants, and mainly they use alcohol. And alcohol is like 70% they use. And my idea is we really have to find a sort of antiseptics or disinfectants which is compatible to our body, which is less toxic, and which not lead to a risk of addiction like ethanol. And I searched in the literature, and after so many research, I found that sodium bicarbonate, 5% solution of sodium bicarbonate can deactivate the virus on the surface in less than 1 minute, and the activation is around 99.9%. Inactivation is around 99.9%. So it's very effective. People avoid using sodium bicarbonate as a disinfectant because when the water is evaporated, the salt remains on the surface, and that's why they prefer to use ethanol. But sodium bicarbonate is very compatible to our body. It is very healthy, and we can even we can drink it up to 8% without any problem. Now, sodium bicarbonate is basic, and my idea was to create a buffer system which has a pH similar to our blood pH, which is 7.4. And to do that, so I had to do a sort of combination between sodium bicarbonate and sodium chloride, and this is what we call it the common ion effect. So 3% of sodium bicarbonate with 2% of sodium chloride can really reduce the pH from 8 point, let's say 2 to 8, and then adding around 0.15% of acetic acid to this mixture, then I can generate a buffer system with a pH 7.4. Now, acetic acid is available in vinegar, and 0.15% is equivalent to 3% normal vinegar, which has usually 5% of acetic acid. So the combination of this mixture is very simple: 3% sodium bicarbonate, 2% sodium chloride, and 3% vinegar, mainly apple vinegar usually I use. And you can add 1% of any source of like water, rose water or flower water, just to let the ions spread really in a very, very refreshing atmosphere. And then implementing this in using a humidifier. And then you put all this mixture in a humidifier, and then let those vapors start going in the front of, and then we can inhale this even vapor, and at the same time, so it will disperse the virus, it will inactivate the virus, and it will push the virus from inside to go outside to regain the equilibrium based on the Le Chatelier principle. Now, this is, I have really implemented this in many people in my circle whom they got this corona, and the conclusion and the feedback which I got. So if you are still in the first stage, it means you are positive, but you still don't have the symptoms. You can do the inhalation 1 day, 3 times, each time 3 minutes. And then next day, it's just like a miracle. It disappears and you will not get corona. Now, if you have a severe symptom, let's say a mild symptom, then really you need, I mean, you start developing slightly, pain or temperature or whatever. You need 3 days inhalation, and each day three times a day. And if you start developing really a severe symptoms, you need 5 days. This is the feedback which I got back from the people whom they really implemented it. I implemented this on me. So I also, whenever I felt I have the pain or the symptoms, I can just implement the principle, and then next day really the symptoms completely disappear. And this is good because no matter what the virus is, how the virus is mutated, no problem, because the process is non-selective and it can inactivate the coronavirus. And even if you have an influenza virus, it will also inactivate this type of virus. So it will protect you from corona and from influenza. So this process is not only a curing process, but it's also a protection process in case you felt that you met people and they have potential to carry coronavirus. You just do this inhalation 3 minutes once, and then it will really inactivate these little amount of viruses which probably you inhaled during this process or these interactions with those people. So I really tried to make clinical studies, but it required so much money, and I just thought just to publish this idea as a hypothesis. It has been published, and everybody can make use of it.
Sorry, Dr. Alzir, for interrupting you, but the time is over. We have only 5 minutes.
Finished. Thanks a lot. So that's it.
Welcome.